The Brexit Ramonas and Project Fear, they're just completely wrong?
No, of course, there is uncertainty. I think to suggest otherwise would not be fair. But ultimately, what this does show is that despite the uncertainty, we have a robust economy. And actually, if you look at what the IMF has said, we are going to be growing faster this year than Germany and Japan.
Now, I was talking to our economics editor, Ed Conway, about this last night, believe it or not, and what he was saying was businesses now have a massive amount of cash saved up, and because of the uncertainty, they're not spending it on new technology, on AI and the rest of it. They're just hiring more workers. But the suggestion is once Brexit uncertainty is cleared out, that investment will go forward, and that will inevitably mean a shrinkage of the workforce.
Well, it's interesting, actually. If you look at the jobs that have been created since 2010, around 75% have been full-time permanent. And absolutely, but what we refer to as high-level occupations, so people getting paid decent wages, between £30,000 to £40,000 more. Yeah. So employers are creating the sort of jobs that are really important. But I think you're right, is that once the Brexit uncertainty is gone, we will see more investment coming into business. But I think that's probably...
And that means that those people in the margin will get laid off, doesn't it?
No, not necessarily. I think that may mean actually even more jobs being created.
I mean, you're from Reading. I worked in the old Courage Brewery in Reading as a student, and it's quite
clear. That's a long time ago.
Yeah, exactly. And it was quite clear then that they were building a new brewery, production line was breaking down, so rather than repair it, they just got in another casual worker to sort of help the beer barrels along. Then they built the new one out by the M4, and all those jobs went. I'm just wondering if that's going to be...
I think automation is a way of life. I mean, that's irrespective of Brexit or anything else that's going on. But what's quite interesting is if you look at every cycle of automation that's taken place through the generations, it has always created more jobs than less jobs. I suspect that's going to continue to happen. But I think the key thing here is that we need to get this Brexit deal over the line to get rid of any of the uncertainty that's out there. And I think you will see more investment flowing into the economy as a result.
Now, you're a loyal minister, but how do you feel about what John Bercow did yesterday?
Well, look, I mean, the procedures of Parliament are for Parliament. For me, the key thing is that these procedures shouldn't stop us having debates and actually voting on issues that are so fundamentally important this time for our politics and for our country. And the government's position is still the same, is that we would like to have a vote, we would look for a short extension. And actually that, Adam, was the Prime Minister's motion last week that we voted on and was voted through Parliament.
But I mean, there is a sense of what he said is he sort of undermined the Prime Minister's whole strategy, because he basically said you can't just run down the clock and grind down your opposition by bringing this vote back again and again and again with the threat of a cliff edge.
Well, what I think has certainly happened is that the chances of a longer extension and possibly a softer Brexit, or indeed no Brexit at all, have become more likely as a result of what the Speaker did yesterday. And I think what every colleague, every parliamentarian, every MP has to think about very carefully is that when this deal comes back to the table, do they want to get this over the line with a short extension, or do they want to risk Brexit itself? That's a choice that each of us is going to face, and we have to make sure that we make the right decision for the country.
I mean, this presumably means if there is an extension that you and your colleagues are going to have to go on attending council meetings with other employment ministers.
Yes, and I was at a council meeting last week, but I think there's a more fundamental issue here, is that if there is a longer extension, we may well have to take part in European elections. I mean, that's another issue that, my MP colleagues are going to have to consider when this vote comes back.
But just on those council meetings, I mean, how useful do you find them? I mean, do you think it will be a loss if and when people like you are no longer attending them?
Well, I think it's always important to have a dialogue, but I think the dialogue will continue on a bilateral basis with countries. We're also, part of the G7, the G20. So all of those discussions go on. The key thing, Adam, right now in the short term is that we have this deal, we get this over the line, and frankly, that is what the EU wants as well. You've just heard from, Europe itself, that they don't like the uncertainty either.
But I mean, people do make this point that our employment levels are much better than the European average. So what are we doing that they're not doing?
Well, I think if you look at the policies, and we could be here a long time me explaining precisely what we've done since 2010, but you're absolutely right in terms of the employment rate. We've got one of the highest in the EU, and actually one of the other key issues has been youth unemployment. So that's almost halved since 2010, and our youth employment rates are higher than the likes of Germany.
But then in terms of economic performance, we take people into the workforce, net result is our productivity is very low because we're employing a lot of people to do the same sort of work.
Well, and productivity has been an issue with us for quite a period of time, and that's why we've got £37 billion in terms of National Productivity Investment Fund going into infrastructure, into physical and digital infrastructure, into housing, into R&D. That doesn't deliver overnight, but the key thing is that we've identified this as an issue and we're making sure that resources are deployed to fix the problem.
Now, what about workers coming into the British economy? Because we know people are still coming here. Would it be right to say that workers from within the European Union, there are fewer of them coming in and there are more from outside the European Union coming in?
Well, yes. I mean, I think if you look at the statistics in terms of people coming, we will have people obviously coming from outside in the EU. The key thing is that as a government, we have a pragmatic approach to employment. Of course, we need to make sure that people are already here are getting skills. We've got a national retraining scheme. There's a lot of money going to apprenticeships and upskilling, and that's really important. But where there are shortages, we are going to be pragmatic and make sure that people are able to come. We already have a shortage occupation list, and you will have seen that at the end of last year there was an announcement on the seasonal labour scheme as well. So we are going to be pragmatic.
But I mean, you know, the real message to people is, you know, if they voted Brexit because they don't like people coming here and taking jobs, the fact is there may be different people, that there's still going to be lots of people coming in to take jobs, aren't there?
Our immigration policy is very clear, which is that it's going to be based on skills rather than where people come from. And actually, if you look at the sort of jobs that perhaps we need to be filled, you know, a lot of those will be skilled jobs as well.
But we're also going to need low-skilled workers, aren't we, for example, in agriculture?
Well, absolutely, and I talked about the seasonal labour scheme. Yeah. So this is about being pragmatic. I think that's one thing I can say for a Conservative government, is we're always very pragmatic when it comes to these issues.
OK, now it's your guess. When at all, if at all, do you think the UK will be leaving the European Union now?
Well, guess is one thing, and I'm not going to have a sort of crystal ball in front of me. What I would like to happen, though, which is that we get this vote as soon as we possibly can with a short extension, and we get this over the line. One thing I will say to you, Adam, is that when I talk to people in my constituency and you know, in other areas, what they invariably want is for us to get this over the line so we can start to refocus on all the other issues that are really important to our constituents. So the extra money that's going into the NHS, more house building, actually keeping the economy strong. That ultimately is what matters to individuals, to our constituents, and that's what we will be judged on come the next general election.
Alok Sharma, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.